Welcome to Animal Quests. Today we're diving into 6 of the most terrifying attacks on humans by some of the ocean's deadliest creatures. These chilling encounters show just how dangerous the deep sea can be. Let's dive in. The first story plunges us into the perilous waters off the coast of Gansbaai, South Africa, where 3 close friends embarked on a seemingly ordinary surfing adventure that would soon turn into a harrowing fight for survival. It was April 22, 1994, and the weather was perfect. Clear skies, a gentle breeze, and the ocean as inviting as it had ever been. Gansbaai, known as the Great White Shark Capital of the world, was a place of stunning beauty, where the deep blue of the Atlantic met the rugged coastline. Alice Parker, 22, was the group's fearless leader, an experienced surfer who loved the ocean's thrill. She paddled out first, teasing the others to catch the biggest waves of the day. Sophie Martin, 21, a marine biology student, followed close behind. As she paddled, she marveled at the ocean's beauty, her usual caution giving way to the excitement of the challenge Alice had set. Emily Dawson, 23, a strong swimmer new to surfing, was the last to paddle out. A smile spread across her face, feeling both the excitement and the pressure as she joined her friends in the deep waters. The 3 friends paddled far out from the shore, where the water was deep, ideal for catching waves. For hours they enjoyed the surf, laughing and soaking in the sun. The ocean seemed calm and safe, a perfect day for 3 close friends. As the afternoon wore on, they decided to take a break, sitting on their boards as they chatted about life and the future. Feeling the sun's heat on her back, Alice decided to cool off. She slipped off her board and dove into the clear water, relishing the refreshing sensation. Sophie and Emily remained on their boards, talking and occasionally glancing at Alice as she swam below them. But after a few minutes, they noticed that Alice hadn't resurfaced. Their conversation trailed off as they waited, but the stillness of the water only heightened their growing concern. Then, without warning, the calm surface erupted as Alice burst through, screaming in terror. An 18-foot great white shark had found her. The shark struck with terrifying speed, dragging Alice beneath the waves before she could even cry out for help. The water churned violently as Sophie and Emily watched in horror. Blood quickly spread through the water, a grim sign of the attack unfolding below. Sophie's mind raced as she tried to process the nightmare before her. Emily, the strongest swimmer, reacted first, paddling toward Alice's last known position. But the shark, relentless, surfaced again, slamming into Emily's board and knocking her into the water. Chaos ensued as the shark circled back, its powerful tail slicing through the water. Sophie, still on her board, was paralyzed with shock as she watched in horror while her 2 friends were being injured by the shark. But with her marine biology studies, she knew the shark's snout was a weak spot. Summoning all her strength, Sophie paddled closer and struck the shark's snout with her board. As she did, the shark's teeth sank into her leg, but Sophie, driven by determination, fought through the pain and kept striking the shark until it finally retreated. The water around them was now a mix of foam, blood, and terror. As the chaos subsided momentarily, Sophie and Emily realized with growing horror that Alice was nowhere to be seen. She had been pulled beneath the waves, vanishing from sight. Just as their strength was beginning to wane, they suddenly heard the roar of an engine. It was a boat, and with it, a glimmer of hope. As the boat approached, they saw a man in his late 60s at the helm, his face set with determination. It was Jacob, a local fisherman who had seen the commotion from a distance. Relief washed over Sophie and Emily, but their hearts sank as they realized Alice was nowhere to be seen. Jacob quickly maneuvered his boat between the girls and the lurking shark. Knowing the immediate danger they were in, he didn't hesitate. He pulled Sophie and Emily aboard with strong, steady arms. Once aboard, Jacob assessed the situation. Sophie had deep lacerations on her leg, and Emily bore multiple bite wounds. Both women were bleeding heavily and in shock. The severity of their injuries left no time to search for Alice. Every second counted, and their survival depended on getting to shore as quickly as possible. As they sped toward land, Jacob called in a radio message to another boat, urgently requesting a search for Alice, who had to be somewhere in the waters. Upon reaching the shore, they were rushed to Hermanus Hospital, where doctors immediately began emergency surgeries. Both survived, but they were left with immense trauma from the shark attack. Despite the swift actions taken, the efforts to locate Alice ended in tragedy. The search teams combed the area, but Alice did not survive the attack. The shark had inflicted severe injuries, including the loss of her limbs, and she died from these wounds. Her remains were later recovered, revealing the full extent of the trauma she had suffered. The events of that day sent shockwaves through the local community and beyond, serving as a grim reminder of the ocean's untamed power. In the summer of 2004, 3 friends, Dylan, Mia, and Jake, all in their early 20s, set off on an exhilarating trip to South Africa. The trio, bonded by their love for adrenaline-pumping activities, had already conquered bungee jumping, skydiving, and surfing some of the wildest waves. But this time, they sought an even greater thrill: cage diving with great white sharks. On the morning of July 15, 2004, the 3 friends arrived at a small, locally operated diving center in Mossel Bay. The center, owned by a seasoned diver named Theo, offered cage diving experiences for those daring enough to come face-to-face with the ocean's most feared predators. Theo, a man with years of experience navigating these waters, welcomed them aboard his sturdy boat and provided a detailed briefing. He assured them that the cage was built to withstand any shark, putting their minds somewhat at ease. Dylan, the group's unofficial documentarian, was excited to use his new GoPro, a cutting-edge gadget at the time, determined to capture every second of the adventure. After gearing up in wetsuits, the trio was lowered into the water, securely inside the steel cage, which descended to a depth of about 15 feet below the surface. As they settled into the cage, they felt a new surge of adrenaline, thrilled that they had taken the plunge. The underwater world around them was teeming with colorful fish and stunning coral reefs. Mia, who had been a bit apprehensive at first, quickly became entranced by the beauty surrounding her. Dylan and Jake, equally captivated, couldn't believe their eyes as they watched the vibrant marine life pass by. Suddenly, a dark shadow loomed in the distance. Moving with incredible speed and power, it was a great white shark, nearly 16 feet long, and one of the ocean's most formidable predators. The shark began circling the cage, its curiosity piqued by the unusual presence. Dylan, eager to document the encounter, leaned slightly out of the cage to get a better shot with his GoPro. The shark made a sudden, lightning-fast charge at the cage, colliding with it so forcefully that the entire structure shook. In the commotion, Dylan's GoPro slipped from his grasp and began sinking toward the ocean floor. Without thinking, Dylan instinctively reached out through the bars to retrieve his camera. Just as he did, the great white shark made a second, more aggressive lunge toward the cage. Its powerful jaws snapped shut mere inches from Dylan's outstretched hand. Dylan managed to pull his arm back in time, but not without suffering a nasty gash from the shark's rough, sandpaper-like skin. Blood began to seep from Dylan's wound, drawing the shark's attention even more. Mia and Jake, now in full panic mode, screamed for help as the shark continued to ram the cage, trying to break through. Theo, realizing the severity of the situation, quickly started the process of lifting the cage out of the water. The crew on board worked frantically, hauling the trio to safety as the great white shark made one last, desperate attempt to breach the cage. As the cage was lifted out of the water, Dylan clutched his bleeding arm, while Mia and Jake held onto each other, shaken but grateful to be alive. The injury, though painful, was not life-threatening. Theo quickly applied first aid to Dylan's wound, wrapping it tightly to stem the bleeding. He then radioed for medical assistance as they headed back to shore. Once they reached the harbor, an ambulance was waiting to take Dylan to Mossel Bay Hospital, the nearest facility equipped to handle such injuries. Despite the terrifying encounter, all 3 friends survived. The next story takes us to the crystal-clear waters off Bermuda on a sun-drenched afternoon, August 4th, 1994. It was a day that began like any other for Daniel and Michael. two close friends with a deep love for spearfishing. This stretch of water was their haven, where adventure was always just a dive away. Daniel, at 32, was an experienced diver, always seeking the thrill that lay beneath the waves. He loved pushing boundaries, exploring the depths where the unknown resided. His friend Michael, a year younger at 31, had recently become a father and now carried a sense of caution with him, especially when it came to his relatively new hobby of spearfishing. Despite Michael's more careful approach, their shared passion for the ocean kept them close, and together, they often embarked on these underwater adventures. The afternoon was perfect. The sun was shining brightly, and the ocean was calm, reflecting the deep blue sky. Daniel and Michael had anchored their boat 2 miles off the Bermudian coast, eager to explore the rich marine life below. Equipped with their spear guns, the two friends took a deep breath and slipped into the inviting waters. They swam down to a depth of 15 feet, where vibrant coral reefs teemed with fish. The water was clear, visibility was excellent, and they quickly began to spear their first catches. Daniel, always the more adventurous, decided to dive deeper, hoping to land a larger prize. Michael, more hesitant, stayed closer to the surface, carefully watching his friend below. As Daniel descended further, his eyes scanned the reef below. The marine life was abundant, and he soon spotted a sizable rockfish hiding among the coral. With practiced precision, he speared the fish, securing what he thought would be the highlight of their day. But as he began his ascent, something caught his eye, something massive moving just beyond the edge of his vision. The water around him seemed to thicken, as if it were holding its breath. Daniel paused, his heart quickening. The silhouette was enormous, gliding through the water with a grace that belied its size. He didn't trust it. His instincts screamed at him to back away. Slowly he began to retreat, moving carefully so as not to draw attention. But as he turned to head back to the surface, the predator struck. Without warning, the shark lunged at Daniel, crushing his right hand. The spear gun slipped from his grasp, spiraling into the deep. His last defense vanished into the abyss. The attack was swift and brutal, the shark's teeth tearing into his flesh. The pain was intense, but Daniel's immediate reaction was to pull his hand free. He struggled against the shark's grip, thrashing and kicking with all his might. As he fought, he caught a clear glimpse of the creature, a 6-foot blacktip reef shark. With a desperate tug, he managed to free himself, but his hand was badly injured, and blood poured from the deep gashes. Above, Michael had surfaced for air, unaware of the danger his friend was in. As Daniel started to ascend, the shark circled back, drawn by the blood in the water. It moved with terrifying precision, preparing to strike again. Daniel's only thought was to reach the surface where Michael was waiting, but the shark was faster. Just as the predator was about to strike, Michael, having noticed the commotion below, dove back down with his spear gun at the ready. With a burst of adrenaline, he swam directly toward the shark, his heart pounding. As the shark closed in on Daniel, Michael struck, driving the tip of his spear gun into the shark's nose. The first strike stunned the shark, but it wasn't enough. Michael quickly jabbed the spear gun into its nose a second time. The repeated blows disoriented the shark, which backed off, swimming in erratic circles before finally retreating into deeper waters. The immediate threat was over, but Daniel was losing blood fast. Michael grabbed his friend and helped him to the surface. The two men surfaced, gasping for air, but there was no time to rest. Michael hauled Daniel onto their dive boat, his hands shaking from the adrenaline and fear. Daniel's hand was badly injured, with deep wounds gushing blood. The severity of the situation was clear, but the nearest help was miles away on the mainland. With no time to waste, Michael wrapped Daniel's hand in a towel, applying pressure to slow the bleeding. He quickly started the boat's engine and headed toward shore, pushing the small vessel to its limits. The journey back felt endless, with every wave crashing against the boat serving as a grim reminder of how close they had come to disaster. By the time they reached the dock, Daniel was pale and weak from blood loss, but he was alive. Michael shouted for help, and within minutes an ambulance arrived. Daniel was rushed to King Edward VII Memorial Hospital in Hamilton, where doctors immediately began working to save his hand. The wounds were severe, but thanks to Michael's quick actions, Daniel's hand was saved. The bond between the two friends was stronger than ever, forged by the shared experience of that terrifying encounter. But the trauma left its mark. Shaken by how close they had come to tragedy, both men swore never to enter the ocean again. Spearfishing had once been their passion, but the ocean's unforgiving power had shown them that some risks were simply too great. Ethan Turner and Jake Lawson, both in their early 20s, had always been captivated by the natural world, particularly the fearsome crocodiles that lurked in Africa's rivers. Their shared passion for wildlife led them to meet in an online community dedicated to nature enthusiasts. Bonded by their mutual admiration for these ancient predators, their friendship quickly blossomed. As their bond grew, so did their plans for an adventure of a lifetime, a journey to South Africa to witness crocodiles in their natural habitat. It was a dream they nurtured for years, and now it was finally within reach. On the morning of August 15th, 2013, Ethan and Jake found themselves standing at the edge of the Tzaneen Dam, ready to embark on the journey they had long envisioned. The air buzzed with excitement, and the tranquil waters, surrounded by dense rainforest, hinted at the secrets they held beneath their surface. With eager anticipation, the two friends set off in their separate canoes, unaware of the harrowing test of survival that awaited them. Their excitement was palpable as they navigated through the wilderness, the calls of exotic birds echoing through the trees around them. As they ventured further into the dam, their patience was rewarded when they spotted a large Nile crocodile basking on the riverbank. The sheer size of the creature took their breath away. Without a second thought, they pulled out their cameras and began filming, whispering excitedly to each other about how close they could get. Caught up in the thrill of the moment, they didn't notice the gentle current nudging Ethan's canoe closer to the massive crocodile. By the time Ethan realized how dangerously close he was, his canoe had already brushed against the reptile. In an instant, the crocodile lunged, its jaws clamping down on Ethan's lower leg just below the knee, yanking him out of his canoe and into the water. The crushing force of the bite sent shockwaves of pain through him as the crocodile's teeth tore into his calf, shredding muscle and tendons. Without hesitating, Jake jumped into the water, his only thought being to save Ethan. The water was murky, visibility was nearly zero, but he frantically poked at what he thought was the crocodile's eye, hoping to force it to release his friend. He could feel the powerful thrashes of the crocodile as he desperately tried to fend it off. But in the chaos, he couldn't be sure if he was hitting its eye or another part of its body. For what felt like an eternity, the struggle continued, until suddenly, the crocodile released Ethan. Whether it was Jake's frantic attacks or sheer luck, the crocodile disappeared into the depths of the dam, leaving Ethan floating in a pool of blood. Jake, breathing heavily and nearly in shock himself, managed to pull Ethan out of the water and into his own canoe. Ethan was barely conscious, his leg a mangled mess of torn flesh and shattered bone. Jake could see the deep puncture wounds where the crocodile's teeth had sunk in, and he knew that without immediate medical attention, Ethan's life was in grave danger. Jake paddled back to the shore as fast as he could, Ethan's limp body lying in the bottom of his canoe. Upon reaching the shore, they were able to contact emergency services. Ethan was rushed to Ledaba Hospital in Tzaneen, where doctors immediately took him into surgery. Ethan survived the attack, but he suffered severe injuries to his leg, including a fractured femur, extensive muscle damage, and multiple lacerations. For weeks after the attack, the imprints of the crocodile's teeth were visible in Ethan's flesh, a haunting reminder of the near-fatal encounter. The experience left a lasting impact on both friends. Their passion for crocodiles quickly faded, replaced by fear and respect for the deadly creatures they once admired. They couldn't even bring themselves to enter the water again. The next story takes us to Clearwater Beach, Florida, where a peaceful summer morning turns into a heart-pounding struggle for survival. On June 15, 2016, a family outing at the beach becomes a nightmare that leaves everyone questioning the boundaries of human bravery and the ferocity of nature. This is the story of Lucas Parker, a 12-year-old boy whose encounter with one of the ocean's most formidable predators, a great white shark, tests the limits of human endurance and courage. Lucas Parker was a vibrant and adventurous young boy with an insatiable curiosity about the world. His parents, Emily and David Parker, cherished these summer trips to Clearwater Beach, a place where the azure waters and golden sands provided the perfect backdrop for family fun and relaxation. On that fateful day in June, the sun had risen over the horizon, casting a warm glow over the beach as seagulls flew overhead, their cries mixing with the sound of the gentle waves. The beach was bustling with families setting up umbrellas, children building sand castles, and surfers catching the early waves. Amidst this picturesque scene, Lucas was eager to explore the shallow waters, his snorkel and mask in hand. His parents, Emily and David, were nearby, setting up their beach chairs and cooler, momentarily distracted by the task at hand. Unbeknownst to them, Lucas's adventurous spirit led him to venture further into the ocean than he had ever gone before. As Lucas swam, he marveled at the vibrant marine life below him. The sun's rays penetrated the clear water, illuminating schools of fish that darted around him, and he felt an overwhelming sense of freedom and excitement. But what Lucas didn't realize was that he was gradually moving into deeper waters, far from the safety of the shore. Suddenly, a shadow loomed beneath him, its movement swift and deliberate. In an instant, the serene underwater world transformed into a scene of terror. A great white shark, nearly 15 feet in length, emerged from the depths, its cold black eyes locking onto Lucas. Without warning, the shark struck, its powerful jaws clamping down on Lucas's leg. The pain was immediate and excruciating, and Lucas let out a scream that was muffled by the water. On the beach, Emily and David's attention snapped to the ocean at the sound of their son's cry. Panic surged through them as they saw the thrashing in the water and realized what was happening. David, driven by instinct and fear, rushed towards the shoreline, shouting for help. The beachgoers nearby quickly understood the gravity of the situation, and chaos erupted as people began to scramble. Amidst the pandemonium, Jack Miller, a seasoned local fisherman who was nearby on his small fishing boat, noticed the commotion. Jack was well known in the community for his deep knowledge of the ocean and his quick thinking in emergencies. As he peered through his binoculars, he saw the unmistakable sight of a shark attacking a child. Without hesitation, Jack maneuvered his boat towards the scene, his heart pounding in his chest. The shark's grip on Lucas was relentless, and the boy's struggles grew weaker as he lost blood. Just as it seemed hope was fading, Jack arrived, wielding his fishing stick with determined precision. With a swift, forceful strike, he managed to hit the shark on its snout, a very sensitive area. This part of the shark, full of nerve endings, helps it sense prey. Hitting it hard caused the shark significant pain and confusion, making it let go of Lucas and swim away. But the ordeal was far from over. As Lucas desperately tried to reach Jack's outstretched hand, the shark, enraged and sensing its prey slipping away, lunged once more. Its jaws clamped down on Lucas's leg again, dragging him back into the depths. Lucas, fighting through the agony, managed to grab Jack's hand just as the shark pulled him. Jack, using all his strength, yanked Lucas upwards, and the shark's grip finally loosened. Jack pulled Lucas into the boat, his legs severely injured and blood pouring out. Lucas's face was pale, and he was on the verge of losing consciousness. Jack knew every second counted. He quickly applied a tourniquet to Lucas's leg to slow the bleeding, and then sped towards the shore, his heart pounding with fear and determination. As Jack raced back to shore, the sight of Lucas's pale face and the blood-soaked water filled him with dread. He knew the boy's chances of survival hinged on getting him to medical help as quickly as possible. On the beach, Emily and David watched in horror and desperation as Jack's boat approached. The crowd parted to make way for the boat, and paramedics, who had been called in the chaos, rushed forward. Lucas was swiftly transferred to a waiting ambulance, his life hanging in the balance. The severity of his injuries was undeniable, and his survival depended on the skill and speed of the medical team. As the ambulance sped away, Emily and David clung to each other, their world shattered by the horrifying events that had unfolded. The following hours were a blur of uncertainty and fear. News of the attack spread rapidly, and the beach community was gripped by shock and concern for Lucas. Unfortunately, despite the best efforts of the medical team, the damage to Lucas's leg was too severe. The doctors had no choice but to amputate his leg to save his life. Lucas survived the ordeal, but his life was forever changed. In the end, as the sun set over Clearwater Beach, the once tranquil shore was marked by the memory of a young boy's harrowing ordeal and the heroic efforts of a local fisherman who risked everything to save him. The next story takes us to Seal Rock Beach on Oregon's rugged coastline, a place where the beauty of the Pacific Ocean conceals a lurking danger. Known for its rich marine life, this beach has witnessed 4 shark attacks in the past 10 years. In the summer of 2015, as the sun dipped low on a seemingly ordinary day, 2 young lifeguard trainees, Jake Harrison and Tyler Mason, were about to face a challenge they never expected: a deadly encounter with one of the ocean's most feared predators. For Jake Harrison, the ocean wasn't just a place of beauty. It was where his dreams were born. From a young age, Jake had been captivated by the sea, dreaming of becoming a lifeguard, saving lives, and protecting others. His determination to pursue this goal set him apart. The ocean's power and unpredictability called to him, and Jake was determined to answer. As the beach emptied and the sun dipped low, Jake and Tyler seized the perfect moment for their final drill, free from daytime distractions. The sun, now casting long shadows on the sand. The final drill was straightforward. Jake would act as the drowning victim, while Tyler performed the rescue, something they had practiced countless times. Jake moved into position, noticing something unusual: a brief flicker of movement beneath the surface like a shadow, quickly vanishing into the deep. It looked like a school of fish scattering, perhaps a seal chasing its prey. He hesitated for a moment, but then shook off the feeling, chalking it up to his nerves after a long day of training. After all, the water was often filled with such activity. Tyler called out to Jake, signaling that he was ready to start, and Jake, suppressing his unease, slipped into his role as the victim, floating just beyond the breakers. Tyler began the drill, moving steadily toward Jake with practiced strokes, focusing on the task at hand. The ocean was calm, with only the gentle lapping of waves and distant cries of seagulls. But just as Tyler was about to reach Jake, a shout echoed across the beach. A bystander, lingering at the edge of the water, was waving frantically. Tyler, irritated by the interruption, glanced back at the shore, ready to dismiss the distraction. But the look on the man's face, a mix of terror and urgency, froze him in place. The man was pointing to something in the water, his arm shaking as he struggled to form the words. Jake, still floating, noticed Tyler's hesitation and followed his gaze. The moment his eyes locked onto the water's surface, the color drained from his face. There, not far from where he floated, the dorsal fin of a great white shark, nearly 16 feet long, broke the surface, its path leading directly toward them. For a split second, time seemed to freeze as the massive shark surged forward, its powerful body cutting through the water with terrifying speed. The onlookers' frantic shouts echoed across the beach, but before Jake could fully grasp the danger, the shark was upon him. The great white lunged, its jaws crushing Jake's thigh, sending shockwaves of pain through his body. The pressure was immense, as if a vice had locked around his leg, tearing flesh and muscle with terrifying precision. There was no time to think, only to react. Instinctively, Jake struck at the shark's snout and eyes with desperate strength, driven by sheer will to survive. The shark thrashed violently, its powerful tail churning the water as it tried to drag Jake deeper into the abyss. Each blow was delivered with relentless determination, though his strikes weakened with the loss of blood. Tyler, just a few feet away in the water, was close enough to see the horror unfolding before his eyes. His best friend Jake was being mauled by the great white shark. Desperation seized him as he frantically splashed at the water, trying to distract the predator. Meanwhile, on shore, the lifeguard instructors, instantly recognizing the dire situation, sprang into action. Grabbing their emergency gear, they raced toward the scene, knowing that every second was critical. The water around Jake turned red as he continued to fight, but his relentless defense finally worked. The shark, stunned by Jake's ferocity, released its grip and retreated into the depths. The instructors reached Jake as the shark retreated, quickly pulling him onto a rescue board and applying a tourniquet. Every second was crucial. The ocean, once a place of solace, had become a battleground where Jake had narrowly escaped death. Tyler, though shaken, helped steady the board as they raced back to shore. Jake was fortunate. This was a lifeguard training session, and the right people with the right skills were there, ready to act. As they reached the beach, paramedics were waiting. Jake was rushed to the hospital, where surgeons worked through the night to repair the extensive damage to his thigh. The road to recovery would be long and painful, but Jake had survived. In the weeks and months that followed, Jake's life changed forever. While the physical scars would eventually heal, the experience left a profound mark on him. Instead of letting fear drive him away from the ocean, Jake channeled his trauma into purpose. He returned to Seal Rock Beach, not as a trainee, but as a certified lifeguard, a symbol of resilience and courage. His story became a legend among lifeguards, a reminder of the ocean's unpredictability and the strength it takes to protect others. Thanks for watching this intense episode of Animal Quests. We just took you through 6 terrifying stories of animal attacks on humans. Definitely not for the faint of heart. If you found these stories as gripping as we did, make sure to hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. We'll see you in the next adventure.